Hey, coach. So now we're at the stage where we've got our niche, or we've got an understanding of what our niche is. Next, we need to progress now with some of our messaging, and we need to be looking at our elevator pitch. So, our elevator pitch, which is commonly known in the coaching industry as our I help statement. Now, it's a key part of our messaging. In fact, it's probably one of the most important parts of your messaging, because you could probably fill a few A4 sheets with a whole mission statement on what you do, how you help people, problems you help them overcome. But the purpose of your I help statement is to try and convey that down in a really concise way that's short and snappy and is going to resonate with your ideal audience and build some intrigue so that it makes them want to have a conversation with you about what that means. So there's 5 components that you need to think about ready for your I help statement. First of all, your target audience. So we've already looked at our target audience. That's the niche that we've previously worked on. Next, we need to think about the key challenge. What's the key challenge that your client, your prospective client, is going to have? So we're going to call that the problem. Then they're also going to want something instead. So they want to overcome that problem and they want to replace that problem with something. So that's what we're going to call the desire. We need to highlight what their ideal future state is going to be. So once they've overcome that problem and got that desire, what's that then going to mean for them in the future? So we're going to call that the outcome. And finally, there's going to be some things that they probably don't want to have to do. So for example, I might want to lose 12 pounds in the next 8 weeks, but I don't want to have to cut out chocolate. There'll be things that your clients won't want to have to do on that mission to get to the outcome. So there are concerns that they have around something they might have to do. So putting that in your I help statement, don't worry, you're not going to have to do this. It's a great way of getting over that bridge straight away. So they're the 5 components. If we look at them again, we've got niche, problem, desire, outcome, concerns. So who is it? What is the one thing they want to overcome, or the key thing they want to overcome? What is it they actually desire instead of that thing? What's then the outcome that they're going to get based on that? And what concerns have they got? What are the things they don't want to do? So they're the 5 components that we're going to look at teasing out in a minute. The reality is, when you're putting together an I help statement, that the pain or the problem, the thing that's causing the challenge right now is usually a bigger motivator to take action than a desire or outcome. Okay, so we should always feature the negative side of things first in our I help statement, our elevator pitch. But we do still include some of the positive, just not the first thing that we put. Also, quite often people have pain and they desire, but they're worried there's something that they're going to have to do in order to reach their goal. So that's that concern. So we don't need to worry too much at the moment about, what are these things going to be? I'm going to take you through that. We're going to do that in the worksheet. But in order to have enough clarity to start crafting your I help statement, I need you to completed that selecting the right niche lesson first. So if you haven't done that yet, please go back and do that and do the worksheet. Because at this stage, to go on to this next part now where we're going to put the I help statement together, you do need to be clear on, first of all, who and the problem and the desire before we start mapping out the rest of the bits in the I help statement. So you're still here? So that obviously means we can carry on. So let's take a look then at the next part, which is all looking at the problems and desires. So in the previous exercise, when you looked at the niche, you probably identified some of the problems. And again, when you did the timeline, you probably outlined quite a few little challenges and problems that you came across on your journey, your own life journey. What I want you to think about now is as many problems and challenges as possible in that negative state. So, for example, let's again go back to somebody who wants to lose weight. So what is the problem, or what are the problems that they have if they want to lose weight? Well, being really specific, it might be things like they hate their body. Okay, it might be that. It may be that they're embarrassed. Okay, it could be that it's stopping them going for a promotion, getting the job, going to an interview. Maybe there's a particular sporting activity that they don't do anymore, so stopped hobbies. So what I'm trying to do here is just think of all of the things. So again, let's say it's somebody who's overweight and not happy with their weight. We'll put LBS up there, pounds. So they hate their body, they're embarrassed, they've stopped hobbies, going on. And in your worksheet, you'll have a whole list of these things to fill in. So I'll be putting in as many different problems as possible. So the key here is to list anything and everything that you think might be a problem for them, or a challenge, or something that in some way connects to an emotion that makes them think, oh God, I can't do that, I can't do this, I can't do that. Now, I don't want you to worry at the moment as to whether it's a limiting belief or whether it's factual. I just want you to put down all of the problems. So in your worksheet, as I say, you're going to have a sheet that's full of these, so you can just put them in and only put one per box. Then what I want you to do is look at them as a pair. So if they hate their body, what do they actually desire? And I know it sounds silly, but in most circumstances, it's just the complete opposite. So if they hate their body, what's the complete opposite of that? They want to love their body. Not just like or be okay with it. They want to love it. They want to love their body image. Yeah? That's the complete opposite. If they're embarrassed, it would have been good to have said what they're embarrassed about. So let's just say embarrassed buying clothes, because they're embarrassed about buying a particular size, right? So if they're embarrassed about buying clothes, what do they actually desire? They desire to be confident, yeah, or proud buying clothes. Yeah, so I'm looking for the opposite end of the scale for every single one. Stopped hobbies. So restart is the opposite again. They're going to restart whatever hobby it was, or maybe start brand new hobbies. So the whole point of this really is just to get you to start thinking about all of the problems that they might have and all of the things that they desire. So the whole point of this part of the worksheet is, again, rather than just looking at your avatar's single problem that you might have looked at previously, it's about trying to think of each and every problem or challenge they might have. What are they thinking? What do they feel? What is all the negative side to their current state? And ideally, what's the opposite to that, which is probably what they desire. So you're going to list all of those out on the worksheet as pairs. And then what we're going to do is take that stage further. We're now going to think about, if they get that desire, what is the outcome and what are the things they don't want to have to do? So let me take you through that. Let's look again at this first one. Let's assume that we're working on this pair here. So they hate their body. That's the problem. What do they desire? They love their body image. Well, okay, if they did love their body image, what outcome would they get? What would that actually mean for them? Well, if they loved their body image, there's probably lots of other things that would be linked to it. They'd be more confident, okay? They would probably go out socially more. Okay, there's probably lots of extra things that would be an outcome of loving their body image. And if they had those things and they understand that they want to love their body image, they're currently hating their body image, what are things that they're not prepared to do? So they really do want the confidence and to go out more socially and to go after that particular job and really love their body, but what's too much to ask? So for example, let's say that it's losing weight. It's too much to ask to basically say that you have got to cut out any form of sugar. They may say, I do not want to have to cut out sugar out of my diet. Happy reducing down carbs, happy reducing certain other things, but I cannot cut out sugar. It might not be that. We're talking about a diet-related one here. It may be that they don't want to spend 90 minutes in the gym every day. That's something they don't want to do. Now, I know it might seem a little bit counterintuitive to start thinking of the things they don't want to do that we might be thinking, well, you probably do. But to start thinking of things they don't want to do is starting to think about objections and objection handling. So, previous exercise, we were looking at problems and desires, and you were looking at them as pairs. What's the problem or challenge? And therefore, what do they desire, which is the complete opposite. Then, for each pair, you're looking at the outcome and concern. So assuming they get what they desire, what else does that unlock? What else does that mean? And what are they potentially not prepared to do in order to get this outcome? And you're going to fill that in for everything on your worksheet. So for every single problem and desire combination you have up here, okay, so that one will be filled in here. When you then look at the next one, stopped hobbies, for example, this third pair, that's going to be your third pair you filled in. And again, as I keep saying on the worksheets, there's I think there's about 8 or 9 different boxes that you can fill in. So you're just going to do those pairs and you're going to work down. So the point to this is to get really granular on all of the problems, all of their desires, all of the potential outcomes and the things it unlocks, and all of the things they're possibly prepared not to do. So you're going to end up with 4 components, multiple times, multiple versions of it that you can then select to use for your I help statement. So now we're going to look at bringing all of that together. You're going to go through and you're going to identify which pairs you think work the best. So let's say that I think of all of the problems and desires, it's probably this which is the real problem, and that's probably the real desire, and actually maybe this outcome and maybe that concern are the ones that I want to bring through into my I help. So what we're then going to do is bring all that together. So what we need to understand is that in your I help statement, and you've probably seen them before, you'll have something like I help niche with or who have a problem get desire, yeah, so that they get a certain outcome without a particular concern they have. So you're just going to fill in the blanks. You're going to, as I say, you're going to select the best pairings that you had, and you're going to say, right, well, I already know my niche, and that's from your previous exercise. Which do I think is the most burning problem out of all of the problems and desires? Right, well, it's probably stopped habits. Okay, so then you'd put stopped habits in there. You'd look at stopped habits and you'd say, right, well, what do they desire? They desire to start brand new habits. So that's what you'd then put in there. You'd look at your pairings for the outcomes and the concerns, transfer them across, and you'll end up with your I help statement. I help niche with problem, get desire, so outcome without concern. And you might want to do that 2 times, 3 times with different combinations to see which one works best for you. The key here is about trying to get you to ideate, to come up with as many different ideas and different ways of slicing and dicing as possible, different words, different thoughts, different feelings, and then testing, putting them together like a little bit of a jigsaw to see what it looks like once it's written down. And if that doesn't feel quite right, pick different ones, build a different jigsaw, see what that looks like. And once you've then got to the stage of putting all of that together and you've got an I help statement that to you feels compelling, it's specifically calling a particular avatar out, a particular niche, it's identifying their single problem, or what I'd like to call bleeding neck problem, that thing that you need to try and solve first, the desire that they have, dangling the carrot of what the potential outcome could be that's in the future if they also get this thing, this desire sorted now. And identifying at least one or two small things that you don't expect them to have to do on that journey to getting what it is that they want. So have a play with that in the worksheet. The worksheet's going to be your friend in this. Yes, you could do your own sort of like spider diagram, ideation diagram, but honestly, just fill the worksheet in that's attached to this lesson. Give it a go, try and extract all of the ideas out, and then try and build them back together and come up with ideally one I help statement or perhaps a couple just to see how they work. And then the final piece is, because there's one more last little piece, what you've done there is you've taken the 5 components of building an I help statement. What you then want to do is you want to create a few different combinations just using perhaps 3 or 4 of those particular components as well. So what do I mean? You've got this at the moment with I help, niche, who, problem, get, desire, so outcome, without, concern. So they're your 5 different components. Now, there are certain social media platforms that don't give you much of a bio. You can only have like 160 characters, 150 characters. So it's definitely worth you playing about with different versions. So take the one that you've ended up deciding upon that you believe sounds good, and then break it up so you've got different versions. So version 2, for example, on the worksheet, that's niche, problem, desire, outcome. So it doesn't have the concern in there. So we've dropped the concern, and see what that reads like. This version is just niche, problem, and desire. It doesn't mention the outcome, doesn't mention concern. This one looks at desire and outcome. It doesn't even mention the problem. And then version 5 is niche, outcome, and concern. So just take those pieces that you've got from that one you've decided and just write down the different versions and see how these different versions feel as well of the same I help, just dropping out certain components of the I help. And that's your very last thing that you need to do. So you'll go through the worksheet. It's going to help you extract all of your ideas, all of the problems, desires, lots of different pairs. You're going to decide on a few, put them together into an I help statement, and then you're going to break those 5 components out and put them together in a different order with the last sheet so that you end up with a single piece of I help messaging, but with 5 different versions of it with certain components left out, which is going to be super powerful when it comes to not having much space to put your message in, to test out what it seems like when it's just a positive, just a negative, with the concern, without the concern. You really get to play with it and start to feel what it's like. So good luck. See you in the next lesson.